our best. It's Monday here on The Story, and we've got a lot to get to tonight. Let's begin with a live look at the Portland Ice Building. This is what the scene there looks like right now. I was there earlier today, and I could feel the energy shifting and becoming more confrontational. Meanwhile, the high-profile conservative social media influencer arrested during protests last week will not be charged by the Multnomah County DA. We'll explain why. And the Rose City once again came up during this morning's White House briefing. We'll bring you all that and more. But first, the Department of Homeland Security told us today the president sent a surge of federal agents to town. The increase in agents appears to mean an increased show of force as social media influencers continue to clash with protesters. I visited the building this morning to hear from both sides.
Last night, bunch of Trump supporters came out and, well, actually just a couple of them came out and started attacking people.
That's insanity. That's insanity. We're out here recording and supporting ICE and showing our love for this country, and they call us agitators when that's all they do is agitate and attack.
How do you blame somebody? What have I done to create violence? What's the argument? Is my presence violent? Because I'm filming, is that violent? What actually is the argument to say that I am agitating or whatever?
I'm seeing the right-wingers instigate fights. I'm seeing federal agents use excessive force night after night. This is what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing what Pam Bundy and Donald Trump is talking about. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it.
You look at what's happened with Portland over the years, it's a burning hellhole.
Portland, Oregon, where it looks like a war zone.
Why the frog suit?
Kind of to showcase the absurdity of what ICE is doing, be in stark contrast to, the violent rhetoric that's going around that President Trump is trying to put out as a narrative that, we're violent. We're not violent. And what better way to show that we're not violent than to be in a freaking frog costume? And somebody fell in the process, and I was in the process of helping that comrade up. It's in the video. And the ICE agent, DHS agent, I should say, got behind me and sprayed into my air vent. To be honest, I had a headache for a while. There are better ways to handle, someone in a frog suit other than spraying them. I was moving back. They were shoving me and I was moving back, so there wasn't really a need to mace my air vent.
No, they're just doing their jobs.
I've been tear gassed since the beginning of this. I've been shot by pepper balls in the head just for singing.
I got arrested last night. I got arrested 2 nights before that. I got detained 2 nights before that. So yeah, I've been arrested.
So talk to me, why are you here today?
To support America and to support ICE and to support all these patriots that are showing up for the same thing.
Why do you want to support this?
Because they killed Charlie Kirk and they want to shut down free speech. They want to shut down speech they don't like.
People have lost their responsibility in this country. And tonight, we will be exercising our First Amendment right, and we will be walking down that sidewalk whether they like it or not.
I'm not going to stop coming back out here. I'm going to come out here every day until either the National Guard comes out here, the feds come out here, or these people get sick of seeing our faces out here.
If this is the country that we're living in, what's really happening? Where's the humanity? Where's the love?
Okay, when we left you Friday, we were waiting on a federal judge's ruling on a temporary restraining order to stop the deployment of the Oregon National Guard troops to Portland. That's when things were a bit more simple. Drama has only escalated since then. So let's take a look at how we got here. Saturday afternoon, Judge Karin Immergut, appointed to the bench by President Trump in 2019 during his first term, granted the temporary restraining order the state of Oregon asked for, blocking the deployment of the National Guard troops to Portland for 14 days. Writing in her ruling, put simply, the issues at stake in this case are important, and the consequences of this court's decision are far-reaching. As soon as the federalized National Guard deploys to Portland, the state of Oregon will suffer an injury to its sovereignty. She later wrote, furthermore, this country has a long-standing and foundational tradition of resistance to government overreach. especially in the form of military intrusion into civil affairs. This historical tradition boils down to a simple proposition. This is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law. Okay, that was Saturday afternoon. And if you thought that was the end of it, oh no. Here's the president Sunday morning outside the White House.
Portland is burning to the ground. It's insurrectionists all over the place. It's Antifa. And yet the politicians who are petrified. Look, the politicians are afraid for their lives. That's the only reason that they say, like, there's nothing happening. And you've seen it. The place is burning down and they pretend like there's nothing happening.
Not long after, we learned from California Governor Gavin Newsom that the Trump administration sent California National Guard troops to a base in Happy Valley, with more on the way. And then Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announced the mobilization of 400 Texas National Guard troops meant to be sent to Oregon and Illinois.
My office has received no official notification or correspondence from the federal government regarding this action by the president. This action appears to be intentional to circumvent yesterday's ruling by a federal judge.
Now, those developments led to an emergency hearing last night with Judge Immergut. She questioned if this was an effort by the Trump administration to circumvent her ruling from Saturday. The DOJ argued that the National Guard members from California were already federalized and under the president's command, and he was simply sending them to Portland. But Judge Immergut didn't buy it. After 30 minutes, Judge Immergut issued this new ruling, temporarily blocking National Guard troops from any state to Portland for 14 days. And that leads us to today and next steps. Kyle Aboshi joins us now with what we can expect moving forward. Kyle.
Blair, first of all, forgive me if you have difficulty hearing me. It's a festive scene out here. There's obviously music and bullhorns, car horns as well honking. So it is a loud scene outside of the ICE facility. But to answer your question, where do we go from here? Both sides have filed their brief to the Ninth Circuit. The feds argue that Judge Immergut's temporary restraining order should be blocked. They argue that Judge Immergut was erred in her decision. The state of Oregon says no. In fact, the judge was correct here, and that temporary restraining order prohibiting the deployment of the National Guard here in Oregon should stay for the next 14 days as outlined in that order from the judge.
Kyle, talk to us. What's the timeline for a ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals? You know, we know the clock is ticking on that 14-day temporary order from last night.
It really is anyone's guess. There is a sense of urgency in this case, as we've already seen in the lower court, and that they've held emergency hearings, one on Friday, one late on Sunday night by telephone, which is quite rare, including the fact that the judge made a ruling from the bench. We typically don't see that unless it truly is an emergency situation, as this one appears to be. So I would anticipate the Ninth Circuit to make a ruling fairly quickly in this case, but again, we'll just have to wait and see.
And can you walk us through what may happen depending on how the appeals court rules?
Right, well, there's really kind of two obvious lanes here. One is to uphold that temporary restraining order, which the state of Oregon would like to see. That basically means that troops cannot be deployed in Portland as a result of that order. The Ninth Circuit could also side with the federal government and block that temporary restraining order, therefore allowing the deployment of troops. What's really interesting here is how this will play out after a decision is made, because if the Trump administration doesn't agree with the Ninth Circuit's ruling, even today the president said he would be open to the idea of invoking the Insurrection Act, which would allow potentially for active military to take to the streets in U.S. cities. So there really is a lot on the line, and all eyes now turn to the Ninth Circuit.
Okay, Kyle Aboshi, thanks for talking to us despite all the chaos around you. And today we also talked with the professor of constitutional law from Willamette University, Norman Williams, for his take on Judge Immergut's rulings from over the weekend and the constitutional underpinning that she relied on.
The United States has a long history with the 10th Amendment of protecting state sovereignty, of leaving it to each individual state to handle local law enforcement. And the U.S. Supreme Court, in a case in the 1990s, with the majority opinion written by a very conservative justice, Antonin Scalia, expressly pointed to the 10th Amendment as protecting states from having their domestic law enforcement taken over by the federal government. And so I think Judge Immergut, in her decision, was pointing to this long history of the federal courts restraining the federal government from trying to usurp local law enforcement within the states.
Now, once again, Portland came up during the White House press briefing this morning. CNN's Caitlin Collins had this question for White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Listen.
A federal judge over the weekend that the president had appointed to the bench in his first term in office basically argued that he could not deploy other states' National Guards to Portland, basically said that it was untethered, his argument, to what is actually happening on the ground. Which local officials in Portland have said that the National Guard is needed there?
With all due respect to that judge, I think her opinion is untethered in reality and in the law. The president is using his authority as Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Code 12406, which clearly states that the president has the right to call up the National Guard in cases where he deems it's appropriate.
Okay, let's pause there before we move on with the rest of what she had to say. And let's take a look at that federal law that she cited. While this may get a little wordy, try to stick with me because we think it's important context. Okay, Title 10 of U.S. Code, so Section 12406, here's exactly what that says. Whenever, 1, the United States or any of the commonwealths or possessions is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation, 2, there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or 3, the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States, then the president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those laws. Orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, or in the case of the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard of the District of Columbia. So it doesn't appear to be quite as clear-cut as Secretary Leavitt made it sound, saying that the president can call up the Guard, quote, in cases where he deems it's appropriate. But of course, that's for federal judges to rule on. Leavitt then went on to say they will, quote, be inviting independent journalists to the White House soon to share their stories from the ground in Portland. Now, we're not sure who exactly she's referring to, but we imagine it's the conservative voices who have a large following on social media who are getting special access inside and on top of the ICE building. Now, access that ICE and DHS officials have not given to members of local media and, frankly, haven't even responded to our requests. And that special access for a select few is one part of this letter that Portland City Attorney sent to the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice today. Robert Taylor was not shy in his opening paragraph, writing, "Does the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice care about the Constitution anymore? Many in Portland and across America have reason to be concerned about the answer to that question." He argues the federal government is, quote, failing its solemn duty to uphold the rights of all people. He went on to write, the city appears to be witnessing unconstitutional uses of force by federal agents against peaceful protesters at the ICE building, and that the feds are engaging in what he calls prohibited viewpoint discrimination. Writing, for example, it appears the federal government is providing special access to the ICE facility for social media influencers who favor the federal administration, while targeting with force those who use social media to document the conduct of the federal government. Taylor's letter to the DOJ was the city's response to this correspondence that the DOJ sent last week, probing about the arrest of conservative influencer Nick Sorter. Now, Sorter is one of those people getting special access at the facility, and tonight he is no longer facing a criminal charge of disorderly conduct. Evan Watson joins us with a look at why that charge was dropped. Evan.
Yeah, Blair, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office says it reviewed video of the incident and then decided to drop charges against Nick Sorter. The DA's office saying that Portland police, an important note here, did have probable cause to arrest Sorter and 2 other people who were protesting against ICE, whereas Sorter was the counter-protester in this case, after what was described as a scrum. A prosecutor said Portland police's arrests de-escalated and diffused the situation, but when they looked at everything that they had, they decided they didn't have enough that would lead them to move forward with these charges against Sorter, although charges against the other 2 remain. DA Nathan Vasquez saying in a statement today, free speech does not include the freedom to commit crimes. It does not matter if an individual is expressing ideology from the left, right, or center. What matters is whether or not there is evidence to prove a crime was committed.
Interesting. Okay, Evan, any word from Portland police on the DA's office not moving forward here?
Yeah, we talked with Portland Police Chief Bob Day today, who said very plainly and very clearly that Portland Police does not make arrests based on ideology or political ideology, that they are based on following the law and the rule of law and looking for that probable cause. He also explained that it's a very normal thing that police would arrest someone, the DA's office looks at the evidence there and decides whether or not to charge someone for what they were arrested for. Here's what Bob Day told us today.
The reality is that we're not paying attention to the left or right conversation. We're paying attention to behaviors, and we're paying attention to what the law allows. All of our arrests are based on probable cause. All of those arrests are evaluated by the district attorney's office. Charges may or may not be issued. We've seen this over the years, and this is not unusual. This is how the criminal justice system works.
Evan, the Department of Homeland Security said today that more than a dozen people were arrested at the facility this past weekend. What do we know about those cases?
Yeah, Blair, the Assistant Secretary of the DHS did not give us the names of those 17 people, which does make it difficult to track. But she did mention a few things with it, saying of those 17 people, they were taken into custody for things like assaulting law enforcement, obstructing law enforcement, failure to follow law enforcement commands, and also trespassing. Though it's not clear how many of those 17 will be formally charged. Just because someone is arrested doesn't mean those charges will follow. Tricia McLaughlin added, for example, on Saturday, during one of the arrests, a federal law enforcement officer was bitten on the finger. This is bizarre and vicious behavior of a dog, not a reasonable person. This chaos and violence will end under President Trump.
Okay, Evan Watson in downtown Portland for us tonight. Evan, thanks so much. And of course, KGW is there every step of the way as this federal intervention develops. Make sure to download the KGW News app on your phone to get alerts in real time. And if you ever miss an episode of the story, you can find replays on our TV app, KGW Plus, or over on the KGW YouTube page. Well, coming up next on the story, we take a break from politics and to head outside. We'll show you how some Washington farmers and a tribe are teaming up to help protect salmon in a river that's dealing with drought. That's next when the story returns. Well, farmers and tribes are joining forces to protect salmon in the Northwest. Some farmers are even cutting back on their crops to help keep more water in nearby rivers that are struggling with drought. Meteorologist Leah Pizzetti with our Environment Northwest team takes us to the Olympic Peninsula for the story.
The sunshine in Sequim is the perfect place to farm. A grueling lifestyle, fourth-generation dairy farmer Ben Smith knows firsthand.
Busy's good though, right? Stay out of trouble.
His family milked 400 dairy cows at their peak. They also farm hay for the animals, corn silage, barley, and vegetable seeds.
We're farming right now about 1,000 acres.
But it's not just sun needed to farm, it's access to water also. In recent decreasing rain and mountain snow is lowering river levels where they irrigate to water their crops, having a domino effect.
We have a limited resource in water. We have, decreasing fish runs, and we have a need to produce food.
It's already a dry place to live thanks to the Olympic Mountains. While the coastal side of the mountains soaks up more than 100 inches of rain per year on average, this side's totals are around just 17 inches thanks to the rain shadow, which is essentially when the mountains suck up all the moisture coming from the Pacific. That is felt in the nearby Dungeness River, where dry weather, drought, and farmers irrigating leaves little water for spawning salmon.
The Sklallam will very frequently refer to themselves as salmon people.
Huntsy Halls, director of natural resources for the Jamestown Sklallam tribe, says the tribe had already worked to rehab this river when drought conditions worsened.
Now we have habitat, we have fish, and we're watching, well, what else is going on to limit fish? And we're seeing that in the last several seasons, we've had declared drought.
Here, there are multiple players with one shared goal, so they teamed up to keep the river flowing.
Water can be sort of this contentious thing, but here everybody knows it's important for human use, but also for the environment. So you have all these different groups that are really wanting to work together and find an answer to keep as much water in stream to help the salmon.
Chris Zernecki with the nonprofit Washington Water Trust says they've now started implementing a new system during drought years, and they saw the success this summer.
We work with the farmers, and they opt into this program where they can choose not to irrigate their land for the last month of the irrigation season, so in August and September, and instead that water stays in stream where it helps the fish that are returning from the ocean at that time.
When water levels are at their critical lowest and salmon are returning to spawn, the farmers get paid to stop irrigating and farming.
We gathered our data and said, okay, if we lose our last crop, we know what that production loss is, and said, this is what it's going to take to make us whole for that last cutting that we're basically foregoing by not irrigating.
Which can be a quarter of their season lost. But a necessary element for this setup is funding, which comes from the Department of Ecology and Amazon, who pledged $750,000 over 3 years.
You can't ask them to do something for nothing, but you have corporations that have water stewardship goals like we do with funding available.
And it's working.
That's been a great tool in our toolbox as a community to help both keep ag whole during those low flow drought years, basically being able to use those funds to go out and purchase the feed that we're not able to produce on our farm.
The ultimate goal, keeping water in the river for our precious salmon. They're seeing the multiple salmon species that swim through this water are returning and spawning, something everyone is glad to see.
They've been in trouble, the populations have been declining recently, so it's really important that we don't let these salmon species, again, this incredible symbol of the people in Washington, go away. We have to protect them and help them come back.
For Environment Northwest, I'm meteorologist Leah Pizzetti.
Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. A special edition of Straight Talk is coming your way next. Be sure to stick around for that. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. If you ever miss an episode of The Story at 6:30, we re-air it at 8:30 and 10:30 on our TV app, KGW+, which you can get for free right now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. In the meantime, have a great Monday night. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.